Well, good morning, Birgir, and thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
Very good, very good.
Congratulations on the successful launch of Play. We're a little over 2 weeks into commercial operation, and with this in mind, can you give me a brief introduction to the airline, why it was created, and maybe some feedback on what you've heard from passengers and crew alike to date?
Yeah, I mean, Play was founded as a company 1.5 years ago, pre-COVID. And obviously, the pandemic put a slight dent in the plans, but in the end, actually was proved to be quite beneficial with hindsight. So we, let's say, finalized the first funding of the airline now in March, April, where we raised $50 million, and we had obviously prepared the groundwork, but then we were able to get the AOC, and the first aircraft came now in June. The first flight was in 24th of June.
Yes.
We got our second aircraft last week, and so we are ramping up our operation now in the summer and into the autumn.
Exciting stuff indeed. Now, as I say, well, thanks for taking time out amongst all those busy things going on for you guys. Now, as I say, you've assembled a very vastly experienced management team there, drawn from all aspects of aviation. And one of the many USPs of Play as an airline, which I'm interested in and I find quite fascinating, is its uniforms. Now, how important to Play as an airline are these uniforms, and kind of how far into the conversations when you were discussing establishing the airline, when did you start talking about the uniforms themselves?
Well, the company is called Play, and we put quite a lot of thought into what the brand means and what the brand is saying, and what the passengers are doing that are on board the aircraft. And our target passenger group is leisure passenger, VFR passengers. And we wanted to, let's say, communicate a light spirit, a comfortable, relaxed spirit. So, and actually taking a flight is almost a commodity product these days. So the uniform and the attitude of the crew is one of the few aspects that you can actually communicate something and do something unique towards the passengers. So sure. We very, very early on, we identified this as a major aspect.
It's a very key alignment of your brand identity, as you're referring to there as well. I mean, do you think in general that airlines pay enough attention to their cabin crew uniforms as well, beyond maybe just colour schemes and stuff, because they can represent a lot more than just functional wear?
Well, I am of course aware that we are not the first in this. I mean, people have identified this before, and many airlines have done all kinds of things. But at its core, the aviation industry is very conservative. It doesn't really like change because it's so regulated. So we tend to be quite, legacy focused or conservative in our approach. So I guess if you do something a little bit different, then it's always big news. But we are extremely happy about the reception this is getting, and a lot of media attention, and also the crew itself is really happy with the uniforms.
Excellent. Now, I'd like to come on to the uniforms themselves, but before I do so, I mean, you went out and chose the Item Duo Gunny and Collar Hilmars for this particular project. I mean, why did you choose that particular fashion couple? I mean, what kind of brief did you give them as well? Because as you say, this is a bit of as a new entrant, this is a great opportunity to introduce something brand new, as you've already mentioned there. I mean, what discussions did you have with them?
Well, they are actually quite well known in Iceland and have done these kind of uniforms before. They worked with WOW Air and many other kind of, actually probably another airline also. So they know the business and they know what the requirements are of let's say, the daily grind of an air crew. So they already knew that aspect. But I mean, they're just really hot designing couple. I mean, Gunni is a pop star in Iceland, and they are just really on the ball and they know what they're doing. And so we didn't really have to give them too much of a detailed brief. We just said, we want something flexible, we want something comfortable.
Yeah.
We are a Scandinavian country, so we wanted to also reflect our society and the way we look at many things. And we didn't really have to kind of spell it into them. They just took the concept and ran with it, and we're really happy with the result.
Yeah, it's quite intuitive then. for them.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of input did the crew have? Did the crew have any input into the final design or kind of the features that they were looking for as well?
Let's say the major aspects, for example, like we have our crew is wearing trainers, for example, and okay, they didn't maybe weren't really involved into what kind of trainers or the colors and whatnot, but just the fact that we're not going to high heels and those kind of things. So early on, we detected in our group of staff that we were going in the right direction.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned the trainers there; they're Nike branded, but I mean, is that a particular relationship you have with that brand, or is it just the trainer of choice, really?
I mean, they're just cool and comfortable and functional, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, let's face it, we are not a huge airline, so we are not going to produce our own kind of line of footwear, you know.
You're not going to go into the retail side of things for this,
no.
So, okay, well, as I say, though, the results are fantastic from all the promo shots we've seen and the pictures and videos themselves. Looking more at the airlines themselves in a bit more detail, I mean, what kind of materials have been used in this? I mean, do they support the airline's commitment to sustainability, for example?
Well, in terms of the actual fabrics, we also had to look. We also have to take into consideration just the functionality and the wear and tear and all that. So we were focusing more on the ethical side of things, like using ethical factories and all fair trade, you know, principles. So I guess that's really that's really how our sustainability goals come into play in this project.
And are they? Is all sourced from Iceland as well? I mean, I know it's a small country, so resources are limited. But you know, with the design trick you've got behind the stuff, is it all? Have you tried to keep it as domestic as possible?
No, it's not. It's not like you said. I mean, Iceland is a tiny country. We don't really have that kind of industry. But so we're working with Icelandic design, but we're working with fabrics and mills and factories abroad, but again, they are sourced and the contract is done based on various ethical, grounds.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Okay, excellent. Now, we've touched upon it a little bit earlier as well, but we've already seen within society some societal changes when it comes to the questions of inclusivity and acceptance. Now, some airlines have already opened gender-neutral toilets, and there have been changes to how passengers can identify themselves at the point of booking with return, in terms of their gender and so forth, and also changes to the types of language used by airlines when addressing passengers and all this kind of thing as well. As we've touched upon already, your uniforms are gender neutral. I mean, was this a deliberate thing for you guys to introduce to make sure it's completely unisex, not to have all? I mean, why did you go down this path? Because I think you're one of the first to actually do it actively.
I think it maybe goes back to the brief of the designers. I mean, like I said, we are a Scandinavian country, and Scandinavia is a very, let's say, progressive area of when it comes to this kind of thinking. And I think it comes natural to us, so we don't really think about it. It's just normal. And so for us, it's quite strange actually to be talking about this, because it's so, we see it everywhere in our society. We can do better, and everyone can do better. But these kind of basic ideas are very natural, I think, to any Scandinavian person. We just wanted to have that reflected in our brand.
Okay, so it's part of your whole DNA, both as an airline, but as an individual, but as you say, the wider society too.
As a society, yeah.
I think it's really good. I mean, you've also relaxed guidance on like personal appearance as well, with regards to makeup and tattoos and so forth, and allow crew to pick what elements of the uniform they want to wear. Do you think this is going to usher in a new era for cabin crew uniforms? Because it's a bit of a departure from what is quite a rigid, structured area in terms of aviation. If we look at like the legacy and the formality that we're so used to on airlines, do you think this is going to bring it up to speed and bring it more updated as well? I
mean, we want to move away from this being a uniform.
Right.
We want it to be a comfortable attire, and we want people our staff to be the best version of themselves. They have to be neat, and they have to be presentable, and they have to feel comfortable, and they have to be relaxed, and we believe that creates a great experience for our passengers. Of course, it's not to say that people can show up dirty or unkempt or something like that. We just want them to be presentable and cool and just normal people.
Sure. So it kind of better reflects your makeup of personnel as well. It better reflects the company and who they are as people, but also as a corporation, as an airline too. Yeah,
I think of course, let's say if you're a female stewardess, you don't have to wake up at 3:00 in the morning and put on your like full kabuki makeup and lipstick and everything and put your hair up and something. You can be, again, I think it's completely in line with Scandinavian culture and.
Yeah, and I think we're beginning to see other airlines maybe look at and revise their policies on this as well. And we'll probably start to see those being formally announced towards the end of the year. I think there's a few out there in the States, for example, that are looking at maybe modernising their instructions on this. Do you think going forwards that this might help, with your recruitment of staff as well, that having this kind of young, updated policy that, as you say, not the formality and rigidness is gone? Would it help be able to attract maybe people that maybe wouldn't have considered a cabin crew career?
To be fair, I think it can go both ways. I mean, I think there's probably many individuals that like this, but I'm sure there's also, like we know, and if we talk about the female aspect of it, because I think it's the biggest changes there. I think there are many girls that have grown up with a dream of becoming a stewardess, and they want the high heels and they want to be able to walk through the airport, in this traditional sense.
Yeah.
But that's an individual choice, and people can then just simply go and work for another airline.
Yeah. And do you think this would appeal to, I mean, at the moment, air travel is so fragmented around the world, and we've seen a heavy emphasis on leisure and family-orientated travel. Do you think this might appeal to passengers going forward as well when demand gets back to where it was pre-COVID, or whatever we want to start calling this term? Do you think there might be a better relationship between passengers and crew with this kind of less formal approach that they have as well?
I think, if you're doing like a long flight and you have a long day, and I don't know, 8 or 9 hour day or something like that, and I think you are better prepared to deal with a problem or request from a family traveling from, let's say, Spain or somewhere, if you're actually comfortable, than if you're having to wear a uniform and being stuck in high heels for like 8 hours. I think it's easier to behave like a human being then.
Sure.
So, but I have to emphasize that we are not relaxing everything. We don't want people to just show up in any kind of, there are guidelines, but we are moving more towards just simply being normal and relaxed.